A trigger warning. The following conversation is about marriage reality. Abraham Lincoln is famously quoted as saying something along the lines of, "If we call a dog's tail a leg, how many legs does a dog have?" 4. Calling a tail a leg does not make it a leg. And so it is with marriage. Inventing something different and calling it equal to marriage does not make it equal to marriage. Aristotle is quoted as saying, "The worst form of inequality is to try to make unequal things equal." This is a national conversation about competing rights. On one side, we have the people who are advocating for homosexual marriage offering adult-centered arguments. They say children are at best a peripheral issue and perhaps not even an issue worth considering. On the other side, we have the people who are resisting changes to marriage being forced on the nation, and they are offering child-centered arguments. They say children are the primary issue and all legislation must be absolutely confident of preserving the best interests of children to be just and equal. And Article 16 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights establishes beyond dispute that marriage and parenting is a compound right. This is a question of ethics. We must always prioritise the interests of the more vulnerable people, such as children, who cannot give informed consent for themselves or to their participation in what amounts to a social experiment over any adult's claims. So please, do not indulge in any assumptions that disagreement with the homosexual marriage agenda is rooted in fear, ignorance or hate. Please be objective and honest enough to accept that deeply held concerns for promoting the best interests of children and avoiding their harm by deliberate circumstances is the motivation of most people resisting redefinition of marriage. These are not exaggerated exercises in imagination. They are based in solid evidence and personal testimony. Children of homosexual parents can, of course, rarely criticise their family structure while children, and risk being ostracised and shunned by their communities if brave enough to do so when they're grown up. Yet some have, and they tell of the harms they suffered even though their loving parents were every bit as capable as heterosexual parents. Katie Faust writes, "Now we are normalising a family structure where a child will always be deprived daily of one gender influence and the relationship with at least one natural parent. Our cultural narrative becomes one that, in essence, tells children that they have no right to the natural family structure or their biological parents, but that children simply exist for the satisfaction of adult desires." Heather Barwick observed, "I grew up surrounded by women who said they didn't need or want a man. Yet as a little girl, I so desperately wanted a daddy. It is a strange and confusing thing to walk around with this deep down unquenchable ache for a father, for a man, in a community that says that men are unnecessary." And Dawn Stefanovic recalls, "As a dependent child and teen, I was not allowed to say anything that would hurt the feelings of the adults around me. If I did, I could face ostracism or worse. Due to media silencing, political correctness, LGBT lobbying efforts and loss of freedom of speech, it is very hard to tell my story. But I am not alone. Over 50 adult children from alternative households have contacted me. Very few will share their stories publicly." Millie Fontana Fox sums it up like this: "This is not equality for children. This is equality for adults. And the very term marriage equality actually offends me because nobody is thinking about the consequence on the other side of the coin. What comes out of that union? And what comes out of that union is us. Well, we're thinking about them now. And the hundreds and potentially thousands of children that will be affected by the Australian government bowing to the powerful homosexual lobby, imposing redefinition of marriage and censoring child-centred discussions. These are public discussions about important issues we're facing as a nation. And by refusing to allow a plebiscite, the left have given us the time to properly assess the evidence of the impacts on children by their proposed changes to marriage. This is not a conversation about the character or value or parenting abilities of people who experience homosexual attraction. There is no doubt they are deserving of every right and dignity enjoyed by other de facto couples without impacting on the transcendent rights of children. But homosexual marriage is not a human right, and wherever possible, being raised by their married biological parents is, on average, in the best interests of children. So let's talk about it intelligently and without choosing to be offended. Let's have a child-centered conversation that's based on evidence and not partisan prejudices. This is Church and State with Dave Pellow.